break down the Foxwoods Resort Casino 301 that takes place tomorrow. Of course, I am Jason. That is Phil. Phil, man, great to do a show with you, man.
Jason, great to team up with you. I've been watching you and Pete do these shows. You guys have great chemistry. Hopefully that blends in well with us as we break down NASCAR.
Yeah, anyone who's ever been in our chat, you'll see some interesting chat with the MMA listeners that check us out over Awesemo.com. Of course, we are sponsored by SuperDraft, but of course, we are here to break down NASCAR. I will have an MMA show here later on today with Pete, 4:30 p.m. each time. So be sure to smash that YouTube button right now. Also, subscribe to Awesemo here on YouTube. But where we want to kind of start off with is I'm just going to kind of throw a couple of questions out for you, and then we're going to break the salaries down by tiers in this one. But let me get your thoughts on the random draw.
The random draw, I hate to be cliche-ish, but it is what it is. NASCAR said we've got no practice, we've got no qualifying for the rest of the season, so for the rest of the year, including the playoffs and the championship race at Phoenix, it's going to be this random draw set by the owners' points. So I mean, we're just going to continue to expect to see the same guys starting in the same positions, unless the guy that's in 12th falls to 13th, vice versa. The guy that's in 25th makes his way into 24th. Those type of scenarios. Oddly, Eric Almirola has found his way to the pole once again. It's whatever good life he's living right now during the quarantine, it's paying off because he keeps finding his way to the front row. Now he starts first tomorrow. You've got three-time winner Denny Hamlin here at New Hampshire starting next to him. And then you've got the gaggle of potential dominators behind him. We had a weird thing with the draw where a bunch of the guys that we generally go with for place differential have found their way into the mid-teens, so it kind of throws off our typical lineup construction that way on DraftKings and FanDuel. And then we've got Christopher Bell, the chalk of all chalk, starting back in, I believe, 35th this week. DraftKings priced him up in case this happened, and of course it did happen. It did happen again. They made him the 5th highest priced driver, but he starts back in 35th, and he's going to be a major play across all formats.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that, and we're going to get in the tiers here, shortly. But he's in that tier 1, that 11 and 10K range on DraftKings. And I'm always, when I see that, like I always just put my NBA lineups together here before we started doing the show. Michael Porter is going to be massively owned. I think we have him at like 70% projections. Is that for you when you're putting your lineups together? Is it, because for me, it's always like, okay, if I know someone's going to be extremely highly owned, I'm like, okay, man, I got to start looking at some contrarian lineups.
Yeah, this has oddly been an ongoing discussion that we've had week after week after week with Christopher Bell. Now, preemptively, the weeks before, DraftKings had priced Christopher Bell a level above 11K. So it made what Bell needed to do in order to be optimal that much tougher. But now that he's down in this 10K range, you're needing at least 5 to 6 times score from him. So you're needing somewhere in that 50 to 60 range just as a minimum in order for him to be optimal in your lineups. The circumstances this week, it's a whole lot easier for him to do that versus the past weeks. But then again, in the past weeks, I thought he couldn't do it, and he pulled it off.
In terms of your research for this race here, is it a tough one?
It is, because of the way that the schedule has fallen this year. We haven't seen that many races that are utilizing the 750 horsepower package that they're using this week. You can count on one hand the races that they've done in that. Phoenix, back in March, skip all the way to Bristol, Martinsville, and then Bristol again with the All-Star race, but we're not really going to count that since that was an exhibition race. So in total, we've had 3 races up to this point. I mean, we are only 7 races away from the end of the regular season, so we've only had 3 races that are using the 750 horsepower package. And if you want to try to do apples to apples, you really can't compare Bristol, which is a half-mile steeply banked track, to New Hampshire, which is a 1 mile sort of flat with it's got banking. It's got the progressive banking in the turns, but nowhere close to what Bristol has. So you kind of have to remove Bristol from your research in comparing similar tracks this season, which leaves you with the tri-oval of Phoenix and the paperclip half mile of Martinsville. If you're not a big fan of course or track history in this case, and you really need corollary tracks to help you figure out what your expectations are for a driver, you're only really left with 2 tracks to really help aid you in your research this weekend. That's a really short data set to try to gauge expectations for New Hampshire.
One of your pieces up on Awesemo.com that people can check out right now. I love this line that when you were talking about this aspect where you said, therefore, be aware that we're swimming in a shallow pool of NASCAR DFS data this week.
It's exactly it. The pool is just a couple of inches deep here, but if you immerse yourself too much, you can drown in it trying to get head over heels into this research, trying to dig too much. I really think that this is going to be trying to find a perfect marriage of what happened last year in this package at New Hampshire and trying to commingle that with what we've seen this year. Yeah, the picture is muddy at best, but it's going to be the best in trying to gauge what we expect to happen tomorrow.
Mentioned about your pieces over at Awesemo.com. One of your big bold part of one of your stories was, can we trust the Pollsitter?
That's been a ongoing question, race after race. Last Thursday night at Kansas, Kevin Harvick, great track history as a Pollsitter, great track history at Kansas, started on the pole. Everything should have been absolutely perfect for him to go out, lead a quarter to half of the race, be an integral part of your lineups. And what did he go out and do? He got passed by Joey Logano on the very first lap. It wasn't until the latter part of the final stage that he finally mustered 11 laps led. It took him the whole race to finally get to the lead, even though he started on the pole. We have seen this in and out where the Pollsitter, because of the clean air, they have had the perfect circumstances, and then something will happen. We'll have an ill-timed caution. We'll have the competition caution, and they will lose their lead on pit road, and they don't get it back because they get stuck back in dirty air. So this is the question that we have this week. Can we trust Aric Almirola? So far, the answer is yes. We saw him lead about 60 laps, I believe it was, at the first Pocono race back in June. And then a couple of weeks ago, we saw him lead 30 laps at Texas. Once again, lost the lead because of the competition caution. So if Almirola gets the clean air, we can trust that he will get out front and he will hold the lead. He's a good enough driver, good enough equipment that he shouldn't have to worry about losing the initial lead to Denny Hamlin. The question is, at 8,500 on DraftKings, I believe his price is up there too on FanDuel. Let's see if 10,500 on FanDuel. The question is, can he lead enough laps to overcome what he's probably going to lose eventually in place differential? Remember, on FanDuel, you're only getting a 1/10 of a point for every lap that you lead. On DraftKings, it's a 1/4 of a point. But on DraftKings, for every position that you lose relative to where you start, you're losing a point. And on FanDuel, it's a 1/2 a point. So you have to have this balance of, can Aric Almirola lead enough laps to overcome what he's probably going to lose in place differential? And if he does, then we're probably considering him for our lineups. On DraftKings, it's a whole lot easier to swallow at that price point, stuck back in the mid 8s. But on FanDuel, that's a real question up there above 10,000.
Of course, that leads me right into roster construction. I always talk about it on the other DFS shows I do, where we're talking MMA or we're talking MLB. By the way, every time me and my co-host Pete Rogers talk about playing NASCAR, he goes, guaranteed, first guy who wrecks, he's in all my lineups.
That is that always seems to be the nature. You're watching that scroll, trying to figure out where your guys are at. and you'll see one of the guys that you have your heaviest ownership in, he just doesn't seem to be showing up. All you did was go to the bathroom or go to the fridge to get something to drink, and you can't find his name, and there he is stuck in the 30s because of something stupid that happened.
Yeah, it's that's always, it's like I talk about MMA. It's like why I don't like taking the first fight of the night, because you lose, you're in a bummer the rest of the night. But in terms of roster construction in all the formats, DraftKings, FanDuel, and on SuperDraft, and addressing Dominators and how that is putting into how you're building your lineups for this one.
First, let's talk about SuperDraft, our sponsor. SuperDraft, of course, you have to start with your champion selection, getting 1.5 the production. Generally, it's find the guy that starts furthest in the back, that has the most place differential upside, that can get the furthest up the front. And those guys are generally, of course, they're going to be the chalk plays, but they also have the highest floor, the highest ceiling because of all their place differential. On SuperDraft, you're only getting 0.2 of a point for every lap led, but for place differential, you're getting 0.75 of a point for every position that a driver gains. Now that we're above 300 laps in a race, we really have to consider these Dominators that, of course, are the cornerstones of our lineups on DraftKings and FanDuel. These drivers are going to lead enough laps that when you add those bonus points to their projections, they can end up with the highest score. On average, our drivers that are leading the most laps here at New Hampshire, going back to 2013 when the Generation 6 car was introduced, they're leading about 117 laps. So if you take those bonus points and you give them to these Dominators, even though their multipliers are lower than the guys in the back, it still gives them enough of a boost that you have to consider these guys. Now, if you don't want to play with those games, because it's like, well, good luck trying to figure out who that guy is. I mean, I look at my race sheets and I've got 9 guys highlighted that you could use as a potential Dominator. So if you're a single entry, maybe 3 max entry person on SuperDraft, because you don't have access to Fantasy Cruncher yet to just take the projections and throw them into SuperDraft and be done that way, because you're having to hand build. Probably the easiest way is just to return back to Christopher Bell with that 35th starting position. His championship multiplier went up this week. It went up to 2.1. It had been down the last couple of weeks. SuperDraft had been trying to anticipate where Bell was going to start, because they generally come out with their salaries on Tuesday night, maybe Wednesday morning, and they don't have a clue of where the random draw is going to put Bell. So they were trying to anticipate this, and they always kind of got left holding the bag because they were giving too much value to Bell. So they started cutting that, and now we're back to where Bell was previously. So a 2.1 multiplier for Bell in the championship spot. He can pick up 20, 25, probably even 30 spots tomorrow in this race if everything works fine for him. And if he does that, then he's going to hands down be the best guy that you're looking at in that championship spot. Now, as per FanDuel and DraftKings, I really do believe that we're looking at a dual Dominator build on both sites. You're going to have 2 guys that are probably going to both lead in that 100, around 100 laps a piece, and then you're going to have a third and a fourth driver, and maybe even a fifth. They're going to pick up the remaining 100 laps. So you're going to have 2 drivers that are going to pick up the bulk of these Dominator points on DraftKings and FanDuel. Let them be the cornerstones of your lineups. We'll get into this when we talk about the tiers, but because of where Bell is, he does throw a bit of a wrench into our DraftKings plans.
Of course, you mentioned about SuperDraft, and of course, we are sponsored by SuperDraft. The future of daily fantasy sports has arrived. Experience SuperDraft's exclusive game mode multiplier. Say goodbye to style restriction and load lineup freedom. Use your fantasy sports knowledge, draft any player you want, and build your very own dream team. Countless lineup possibilities let you experience daily fantasy sports the way you want. SuperDraft offers contests for NBA, MLB, PGA, NASCAR, and MMA, so you can enjoy the best of DFS all year round. Sign up for SuperDraft today using the promo code Awesemo10 And it's $10 free on your first deposit of $10 or more, and first deposit of $10 or more, if I can say that correctly, and $20 total free on your first deposit of $100 or more. Download the App Store or play at SuperDraft.io. SuperDraft's no limits, more winning. Of course, we are having an awesome deal going over at Awesemo.com right now to get half off your first month of Awesemo Plus when you use the promo code RESTART at checkout. That's only $45 for a month of Awesemo's leading DFS projections, tools, and content for NBA, MLB, PGA, and more. Celebrate the return of sports with this great deal. You won't find a better value anywhere else, and that deal does expire on August 3rd. Of course, that is promo code RESTART. Now, if you're looking for a NASCAR weekly pass where you get access to all the great tools we have over at Awesemo Plus for the upcoming NASCAR slate, with the weekly pass for $9.95. This includes full access to all of Awesemo's leading driver projections, ownership projections, and top drivers tool. There's never been a better time for NASCAR DFS, so get on the track today. But Phil, let's get right into the tiers. So I broke this down into 4 tiers. Tier 1 being fighters, or excuse me, I'm thinking MMA, drivers who are in the 11,000, 10,000 range. Tier 2, 9 and 8. Tier 3, 7 and 6. And then Tier 4 is 5K and it's under 6K and under. Let's start off that tier number 1. We've got 5 drivers. You've obviously talked a lot about Christopher Bell already. He, of course, outside of him, the other 4 drivers are all in the top 12.
Yeah, you are looking at 4 of your main dominators for tomorrow's race. Kevin Harvick, 3 of the last 5 wins here at New Hampshire. He's won the last since New Hampshire lost its fall race to Las Vegas. This has just become an annual race in the summer. Harvick's won both of those back to back. Yeah, if Harvick isn't probably the highest owned driver tomorrow besides Christopher Bell, I will be really surprised. When you look at Harvick's stats just on the periphery, they're really not that amazing, because over the last 4 races going back to 2017, he's only averaging 13.3 laps led, 19.8 fastest laps, but yet he finds his way to the lead by the end of the race, and he wins. He's kind of stolen these last two wins, if you could really steal anything in NASCAR. But I mean, we all know right now what the story is on Harvick. If he's not the best driver right now currently running, he's number 2 to Denny Hamlin. Ever since Pocono finishes a first, second, first, fourth, fifth, and fourth, the consistency is there. The track history is there. The only question is that salary, 11.6. What you need from him to pay off of that, especially on FanDuel, 14.2. That's you are at 14.2 on FanDuel. You are really approaching an area where you need him to lead more, at least half or more of the race. Now here on DraftKings, you're not specifically looking at that, but Harvick definitely fits the bill of what you're looking at. Besides that, you've got Blaney at 11.1, Truex at 10.7, and Hamlin at 10.4. If I was just to guess, people looking at corollary tracks, people looking at the stats this year, they're probably going to pair Hamlin and Harvick together in the majority of their lineups. And see, this is the tough thing, is that if you add Bell to that equation, where you say, okay, Harvick and Hamlin, they're going to be my two main dominators on DraftKings, and then I'm going to add in Christopher Bell because of his place differential. What you're stuck with is you're picking 3 drivers all below $6,000, and not only are you really killing your upside with three punt plays, what you're basically asking for is for these guys below the 6K range to really excel what they normally would do in a race. Now, this is the kind of build, this 2 expensive dominators plus Christopher Bell and 3 punts. That's what we would look at say a 400 lap or a 500 lap race, not a 300 lap race. So the more and more that I play around play around with this. The pairing of Harvick and Hamlin plus Bell on DraftKings, I don't think it's really the way that you want to go. I think either you're going to go, if you are committed to Harvick and Hamlin at their prices, I think you're committed to doing Harvick and Hamlin and not adding Christopher Bell, or you're choosing Christopher Bell in lieu of Harvick or Hamlin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just looking at what we have right now as the ownership projections just on DraftKings. Kevin Harvick at 32%. Christopher Bell, as I scroll through this, 8%.
That sounds like a fly in the ointment to me. That will definitely, because of that lowered price, that will definitely approach probably the 25 to 30% range.
And talk about this tier one, David, in the YouTube chat, and David, appreciate the question. He said Ryan Blaney or Hamlin or Bell, DraftKings GPP.
Assuming that this is, I've already got one Dominator, we're just going to assume that's Harvick, and I want to add in a Blaney, a Hamlin, or a Bell. If you're looking for the safe play, I think it's Christopher Bell, because we're not projecting him to lead laps, even though he won the last two Xfinity races here. The gap in talent in the Xfinity Series versus what he's doing in Cup this year, it's a chasm. So we're not expecting him to lead laps. We're not expecting him to win. A top 10 finish to somewhere between top 10 to top 5 is probably his ceiling, and even at that, he's going to need some attrition from these top guys wrecking out, having mechanical issues or what have you. So even if he achieves his ceiling, what are we're talking about, a 70-point day on DraftKings? If Blaney or Hamlin are the secondary dominators, then we're talking about them having 90 to 100-point days. So I believe the ceiling is just that much higher with Blaney or Hamlin. Now, when you're choosing between the two, I'm going to take Hamlin because of the track position. All he has to do is pass Eric Almirola either early on or shoot right off the initial jump. Blaney, he has some place differential to help boost that cost, but he's going to have to work his way through the field to get up to the front.
What about Truex Jr.?
The whole Joe Gibbs stable of Kyle Busch, Truex, Hamlin, and Eric Jones, they're all super appealing this week. I've been kind of hands off with both Kyle Busch and Martin Truex because it has felt like in the 550 horsepower package at these intermediate tracks that they really needed practice to help get their cars dialed in for that initial setup going into the race. And they've had some good showings, but nothing close to what they're capable of. I'm wondering, with this being the different package, the 750 horsepower package, basically it's just going back to what your notes are last year for these teams. Truex has done well here. We're talking best average finish in the field dating back to 2017, finishes of 6th, 4th, 5th, and 3rd, averaging 83 laps led per race, 39.3 fastest laps per race. He has been one of the best drivers in this field. He just hasn't found victory lane by the end of the race. I think Truex, it might be off of the periphery of people because of his season, but I think that he's another guy that you really have to consider as a potential dominator. Not a primary, but definitely that secondary guy that you're looking to get into your lineups.
Michael asks, he says, how often would a completely contrarian approach work in a race like this by simply not taking Harvick, Hamlin, or Bell?
Quite frankly, with what we've seen in the last couple of races, it wouldn't be the craziest thing. We've been, and I hate to say it, we have been slamming Harvick week after week these past couple of races, expecting him to just run away with the race. And yeah, he's had great finishes, but his Dominator points, they just haven't been there. So maybe me and the rest of the collective NASCAR DFS touts, we're just going to be left, with an empty bag again following that race tomorrow, saying, "Where's our points, Harvick? You were supposed to win this race. You were supposed to lead laps, and you didn't." With as little information as these teams have going into this race, if you were to just totally get away from Harvick and Hamlin, I wouldn't if you're going to get away from those two, I wouldn't necessarily get away from Bell, because Bell has the safest floor because of that place differential. But if you wanted to get away from Harvick and Hamlin because their ownership saying, "Well, crap, this is an open field. Anybody could be one of the top two potential dominators," I'm not gonna fault you for that. If I look at Alex's NASCAR top driver tools, in terms of percentage chance to be a top two dominator, he's got Harvick and Hamlin up there with the top two percentages. He's got Harvick at 26.8% and Hamlin at 31%. When it comes to top six fantasy scores, he's got Harvick at 52.5% and Hamlin at 50.2%. So, God, the metrics say chase these two, but God, this is NASCAR. Anybody could get to that lead and sit on that lead because of the package and the clean air, and you could end up with 11,600 Kevin Harvick, who scores 40 points.
Another question before we get into tier two. This comes from James. He goes, FanDuel pivot from Harvick and Hamlin, Blaney and Truex.
I definitely could see that. I talked about Harvick's salary. It's so aggressive on FanDuel that you really do need him to not just lead a third of the race. You almost need him to lead a half of the race, or possibly even more. And Hamlin's kind of up there too at 13.4. With only a lap led netting you a tenth of a point, and FanDuel not awarding fastest laps, that threshold that Harvick and Hamlin need, it's that much greater. And once again, if you wanted to go with the cheaper Blaney and Truex, which is going to allow you not to have to use your last roster spot on one of these punt guys, it's going to allow you to go a little bit further up the starting grid to get your last guy in. That's a really good strategy for tournaments.
Tier two is 9K and 8K drivers here. Obviously, we've talked about the Pollsitter a lot here, but he's a part of this tier. Logano 9,800 is at the top of it.
Gotta love Logano on the possible rebound this week. I really wasn't aware of it because Logano has been off of our radars practically ever since the start to racing again at Darlington. Now, he nearly won the race at Bristol before Chase wrecked him out, and then you go back to that Wednesday night race at Martinsville back in May or June, and he led a ton of laps. I believe he led nearly half of the race, but everything else, he's just kind of been there. He's been a good driver and great equipment that'll get you a top 10 finish, but nothing else. So now that we're going away from that 550 horsepower package, coming back to the 750 horsepower package, you look, Logano's possibly been the best driver in this package. He won at Phoenix, led 60 laps, nearly won it at Bristol, even though he really didn't lead that many laps, but he nearly won the race before Chase took him out with 3 laps to go. And then you go back to Martinsville, like I said, and he led nearly half the race, finished 4th. So if we're going to take our smallish sample and say, what have drivers done in this package so far this year, and how does that translate into New Hampshire, then you've got to have some exposure to Joey Logano. He's relatively cheap. I really like him as a possible champion selection on SuperDraft with a multiplier of 1.9. But he's a local kid to this area. This is technically his home track if you want to buy into those type of narratives. But I really like Logano on the chance that we're getting away from the 550 horsepower package. We're coming back to the 750, and this feeds more into what he's capable of doing this season. And if we're buying rebounds, then I want to look at Kyle Busch. He's cheap. He's 9,300. He's a former winner at this race. His most recent win was the fall 2017 race, the last time that they raced here in the fall. Since then, second in 2008, eight last year, averaging 109 laps led per race over those 4 races with 56.3 fastest laps, averaging 91.9 DraftKings points, which is hands down best in the field. 128.4 driver rating. He has been so good here at New Hampshire, and we've all been kind of waiting for Kyle to rebound and to get into the form that we expect. So what better way to propel him to that than a track that he's had really good success at a type of track that he normally excels at.
I was going to mention the fact of this tier. We've got, in terms of starting position, 1, 3, 4, 5, 8, and 9.
Yeah, we've got a slew of guys that you would definitely consider as your potential dominators, and then kind of married in here, we've got some place differential options, both cash and GPP.
Yeah, because in this tier you only have 2 drivers who are outside of the top 10, and that's Jones starting at 17, Matt starting at 19.
Yeah, and Jones has driven really well here at New Hampshire. Once again, whatever notes that Joe Gibbs has as per New Hampshire, it bleeds over into the whole stable. And even the drivers that have part-time affiliations with Joe Gibbs. And then you're looking at Matty D there starting 19th, who probably isn't going to pop to a lot of people because of how far he's starting back, and they think he's probably overpriced. But I think he's a great cash play this week.
Then we got tier 3, which is fighters underneath 8K and that 7K and 6K range. And I guess we'll start off talk about Matt Kenseth, because we actually got a question on the chat from Chad, just asking for your thoughts on Matt Kenseth in this spot.
This is like an episode of X-Files. I want to believe, but everything in front of me says that you're burning your salary cap by playing him. Kenseth has been really good here at New Hampshire. If I pull up the last 10 races page on the race sheets and look at Kenseth finishes, I mean, it's pretty stellar. We're talking 4th, 21st, 6th, then 1st, 2nd, 4th, 3rd, and then 15th in his last race here. I believe that would have been racing for Roush. So when he was in good equipment racing for Joe Gibbs, he was a perennial threat to win this race. But that's not the Matt Kenseth that we're seeing this year. Mm-hmm. You take Matt Kenseth out of Pocono and Indianapolis, which is odd that the 2 tracks that he excelled at were the long, horsepower driven flat tracks. Everywhere else, Kenseth has not been good. He has not looked like the driver that we remember from his days at Joe Gibbs, or even going back, a decade or more to when he raced at Roush. The 42 has not looked like the same car that when Kyle Larson drove it. If you play Matt Kenseth, you're banking, I think, on track history. But we've seen plenty of other races since he returned, tracks that he's been good at, that it just hasn't materialized.
As I look at this tier 3, it just kind of made me think of this question of who is the driver in this tier that we should be talking about that maybe necessarily is not being talked about that much this week?
He's the most expensive, but it's probably going to be William Byron.
Mm-hmm.
Byron in his two starts here, driving the 2024, he's been okay, 12th and 14th. But when you look and see what Byron's done so far in this package, our short 2-race data set, we are talking about the only driver starting below, believe it's starting below the 10th position that has finished top 10 in both Phoenix and Martinsville. So he's shown in this package and these type of tracks that he has a top 10 ceiling. Now, if any one of these drivers in this price range outside of Kurt Busch were to find their way into the top 10 by the end of the race, I think that it's going to be Byron. And with that 16th position, he's a little too far forward for our taste for cash games, but I think that makes him a really good tournament play there at 7,900.
Andrew in the chat asking about, he wants some thoughts on Joe Nemechek on the FanDuel side of things in terms of GPP. I guess also we can talk about it in terms of DraftKings as well.
Okay. Yeah. DraftKings priced up Nemechek last week inexplicably, and they've just kind of left him there. He's at 7,000. He's priced between Clint Bowyer starting 6th and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. starting 31st. I think he's a better driver than Ricky Stenhouse Jr. possibly, but he's definitely not as good as Clint Bowyer. On FanDuel, I can get down with it because he's only 6,200. You're not really paying up that much for Nemechek. And if you look at what Nemechek's done in this package, he's doing what you would expect. He's got an average finish of 21st. So a good driver, good equipment, finishing around 21st. That's what you should expect for John Hunter. If he's going to pick up 15 places, then that's probably a driver that you want as your last guy in on FanDuel. Now, the conundrum with him on DraftKings is that $7,000 price tag. There are a whole lot more drivers cheaper than him that I think have better ceilings than Nemechek, especially with Nemechek has had a bad propensity to wreck. Somehow he's still managing to not wreck into anybody else or the wall and finish the race, but he keeps spinning out, and eventually this is going to catch up with him, and maybe it catches up with him here at this shorter course. If you do, especially this is more of a cash idea, but if you do the single Dominator, Harvick, Hamlin, whoever, plus Christopher Bell, or if you just say, screw it, I'm playing the front row plus Bell, which is something you can totally feasibly do, and then you've probably got some salary left over. You're going to be in this range. If you want to play John Hunter Nemechek as a floor play because of that place differential, hoping that he does kind of sneak his way back into the 20s, not gonna fault you for that play.
On SuperDraft, he's 1.55 times. Does that interest you at all?
Yeah, that not as a champion pick, but as a flex play. That it intrigues me, especially when you look at where the guys that are in that similar range. We're talking about Ty Dillon, who starts 25th, has 11 fewer places to gain. You're talking about Bubba Wallace, who starts 15th. Really, and then Ryan Newman, who's got a 1.6 multiplier, but he starts 22nd. So really, kind of around that area where Nemechek is. He is probably the best play in that 1.5 to 1.6 position.
Looking at some other, Clint Bowyer, he's starting in the 6th spot at 7,200 on DraftKings. Kurt Busch at 10, Cole Cluster 14. You mentioned about Bubba Wallace starting in the 15th spot. Kind of, I don't know if you want to take one of those drivers, whatnot, and kind of expand on some of your thoughts of just them in terms of their salary range here.
Kurt is underpriced. He should probably be in that 8K range somewhere. So I like that with Kurt. He's underpriced. You're getting him starting 10th. Now, what you need from Kurt is you need him to basically just kind of grab a few positions and just sit there the rest of the day. Or his last 4 races here, they're kind of all over the place: 18th, 8th, 37th, and 8th. But he's averaged 23.5 laps led and 16.5 fastest laps. So I mean, the Dominator potential is there for Kurt. And this is the discussion that we'll have with a few guys. We are getting kind of dangerously close to the end of the regular season, and this year's regular season closes out at Daytona. So a lot of these guys that haven't secured their playoff spot via a win, they're hanging above the 16th spot because of points. I think they understand that the precipice is on them to not only bring home solid finishes towards Daytona, but really kind of strive towards a win, because the last thing they want to do is be on this bubble and get to Daytona, and then Daytona could be a total crapshoot. And remember, to make the playoffs, all you have to be is top 30 in points and have a win. So you could have one of these Joe Schmoes, literally like a John Hunter Nemechek, sneak his way into the playoffs because he was the right place at the right time. So could Kurt have some added motivation this week to drive a little harder and possibly get his way up to the front? I can see that. Regardless, 10,000 on FanDuel, that's hands off, but 7,700 on DraftKings, that makes him an interesting tournament play.
By the way, if you do have any questions, hit us up right now in the chats. We're going to get to those. The final tier 4. So this is everyone under 6,000, and just looking at your best starting position in this spot is Ty Dillon at 25th. You mentioned earlier about if you're going to try to take the core of, say, a Harvick, a Hamlin, a Bell, this is where you've got to be looking. You're going to be looking for some punt plays. Is there a driver too that sticks out to you that you think that if that is your strategy heading this one, that these are kind of drivers you should be looking at?
Yeah, and the more that you have of these drivers, the story that you're telling yourself is that tomorrow is going to be an attrition race. That the reason that these guys that are all starting in the mid to late 20s and 30s, the reason that they become viable plays is that there are wrecks up front. These guys keep their noses clean and just continue to pick up spots through attrition. They didn't exactly have the greatest race themselves, and they may have even finished a couple of laps down. But the fact is that they finished this race while everybody else ahead of them, better cars, better equipment, better drivers, were wrecking out. King of that is going to be Daniel Suarez. At 5,900, he's the highest of these guys, but he starts 37th. He's got tons of place differential. Now, the script on Suarez is that he always starts 37th, picks up 10 spots because he passes everybody that he's better than in this car, and he kind of floats around the 25th to 27th spot. Well, if this is going to be an attrition race, like I said, in these type of races this season, we have seen Suarez race smart, race safe, and by the end of the race, he's anywhere from 18th to 22nd. And at his lower price of 5,900, if that's the kind of race that we're going to see tomorrow, then that makes him a very valuable play regardless of the format. If you don't trust Suarez and you don't think that this race is going to be that particularly, caution filled, it's going to be a pretty green race, then you're probably better off siding with Ty Dillon, who's a little bit cheaper. Yeah, he doesn't have near the place differential to gain, but what you can kind of bank on Dillon is that he'll be hanging around the tail end of the lead lap, and he'll probably stay on it for the majority of the race. And in doing so, he'll pick up 5, 6, maybe even 7 spots in the process.
course, over on SuperDraft, Suarez 1.65 times multiplier in that flex position. Of course, we are sponsored by SuperDraft. The future of daily fantasy sports has arrived. Experience SuperDraft's exclusive game mode multiplier. Say goodbye to salary restrictions and hello to lineup freedom. Use your fantasy sports knowledge, draft any player you want, and build your very own dream team. Countless lineup possibilities let you experience daily fantasy sports the way you want. SuperDraft offers contests for NBA, MLB, PGA, NASCAR, and MMA, so you can enjoy the best of DFS all year round. Sign up for SuperDraft today using the promo code Awesemo10. Once again, that is Awesemo10, and it's $10 free on your first deposit of $10 or more, and $20 total free on your first deposit of $100 or more. Download in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. SuperDraft, no limits, more winning. Of course, we got a great promo code going on right now over at Awesemo.com, where we are giving you your first month of Awesemo Plus half off when you use the promo code RESTART at checkout. That's only $45 for a month of Awesemo's leading DFS projections, tools, and content for NBA, MLB, PGA, NASCAR, and more. Celebrate the return of sports with this great deal. You won't find a better value anywhere else. This offer is valid through August the 3rd. It's August the 1st, so August 3rd coming up on Monday. Also, get access to all the great Awesemo Plus tools and content for the upcoming NASCAR slate tomorrow with an Awesemo Plus NASCAR weekly pass for $9.95. This includes full access to Awesemo's leading driver projections, ownership projections, and the top drivers tool. There's never been a better time for NASCAR DFS, so get on the track today. When you're putting those lines together, you got to be looking at those ownerships and figuring out. I'm always using those tools. How can I be contrarian? How can I figure out who's going to be in that lineup? In terms of Tier 4, anyone under 5K?
Woo! It's quite remarkable that just kind of bumping this up. If you look at Timmy Hill's 5,400, you've got Timmy Hill, J.J. Yaley, Brennan Poole, Joey Gase, Garrett Smithley, Quinn Hoff, James Davidson, and Hoff is the only driver that has seen this track in a Cup car. The rest of these guys are making their maiden voyages in Cup cars. And once again, if you're going this deep, it's because you need the salary relief because of the Dominators that you're playing. Plus, it's about maybe this guy. Maybe all I need from him is a 28th, 27th place finish, and that's enough to make him viable. In that case, I'm probably looking at either Quinn Houff or Garrett Smithley, just for the salary savings. I don't want to necessarily play James Davison.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy that is going to be green behind the gills in terms of what he's doing this weekend. Maybe I think this is only going to be his second career Cup start, second career NASCAR start, maybe. I think his first one happened back at Indianapolis, so he's had no track time, no feel for this car, and he's starting 26th. So he's got a good 12, 13 places to lose, even though he is the stone minimum on DraftKings. There's a good strong possibility that he's going to end his day with negative points. I'm not that enthralled with Houff, but it's just the fact that he's been here before, that he raced in this race last year, and he started 34th, went to 31st. Now this year he starts 32nd, so maybe he can kind of do the same thing and just kind of hang around there. Last year he ended his day with 17 DraftKings points, so he basically ended his day with a 4x salary to point production. If he can sneak that into the 20s, then maybe we're looking at 5x. And then Smithley, for nothing else, then he's 4,700.
Yeah, just looking at Smithley at 4,700 0.1% is right now our current projection on ownership. Same thing with Davidson. Quinn 5.4%. Right above him at 5.9% would be Alex Bowman. So and obviously that's one of those tools over at Awesemo you got to check out. Michael did ask if there's any weather concerns for tomorrow.
I have looked at the forecast, and we are looking at fairly clear skies and a high of 87. So it looks like it's going to be a good day for racing tomorrow.
Next up, Taylor says Dylan, Priest, or Hill, Hail Mary for DraftKings GPP.
All right, let's go all three of these. So first guy, I'm assuming Dylan. He meant Ty. We've talked about Ty. Priest, I am personally hands off on Priest and his teammate Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s until we get back to Daytona. Yeah, these guys, they keep finding ways to end their days early, whether it's mechanical or they're wrecking. I believe. Let me scroll over here to their recent finishes. Yeah, Priest. Last four finishes: 29th, 37th, 36th, and 38th. I mean, it is actually no. That was Timmy Hill. So if you wanted to play Timmy Hill, be warned about that. Priest is even worse: 40th, 38th, 40th, and 34th. Priest just continues to find a way to end his day early. And I hadn't looked at this myself, but Fantasy Racing Online posted this morning on Twitter that collectively over the last four races, Ryan Priest has scored a grand total of 0 DraftKings points. There is no floor. There is no ceiling for Ryan Priest. And Timmy Hill, he's 5,400 because he starts dead last. So you're paying for place differential there with a guy that maybe his place differential is five or six spots. You know, I'm really not enthralled with it. So the answer is going to be Ty Dillon.
David asked Reddick or Kurt Busch.
Woo. Okay, so we've talked about Kurt, what he kind of needs to do to sneak into the playoffs, and you know how he can pay off just by hanging around. If we look at Ty, he's got a lower salary. He's got more place differential to game, but it's really not that much at 13th. Really, I think that one's more of a toss-up. Tyler is definitely hands off this week for cash starting 13th. And if I look at what he's done in this package this year, it's a tale of two cities. His average finish is 24.5, but his average running position is 13.5. So he's kind of finding a way to fall back towards the end of the race relative to where he is. Now, does that happen again tomorrow? That's to be seen. But I want to buy on the idea of Reddick getting things figured out as this season goes along. So, if you were really pressed between Reddick and Busch in that $200 difference on DraftKings, I think I might go with Reddick.
Michael says a new PJ1 laid down on the track, which may affect the grooves.
I saw Bob Pockras tweet this morning that they put down a layer of the traction compound in the lower groove, which is odd because that was the one place that they didn't need to put it. So if that goes into your thought process about Harvick and Hamlin in the initial start, it may give you more credence to not Harvick, Almirola or Hamlin. But the fact is that it takes this stuff a good 20 laps before it actually becomes something useful for the drivers to use. So will it be a factor later on? But I think if you're trying to use that as a way to distinguish driver versus driver, you might be just adding a little bit too much noise in your process.
Be sure to hit that thumbs up button right here on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. Of course, coming up here today, later on today here on the YouTube channel, we've got MMA Live Before Lock. Myself and Pete Rogers Jr. will take you up leading up to UFC Vegas number 5. Then after we are done at 6 o'clock Eastern, it'll be MLB Live Before Lock as EMAC and Jake will be taking into tonight's MLB action. Next up, we've got a question about low-cost options that will finish well.
Okay, let's look. I hate to bang the drum, but probably the guys that you're looking at that are your lowest salary savers on DraftKings, it's going to be your Corey LaJoie at 6,200. Starting 33rd, Chris Buescher, 6,100, starting 24th, and then the aforementioned Daniel Suarez and Ty Dillon. These are the guys that actually have the potential to get into that top 20 range. The rest of these guys, they're gonna save you salary, but what their actual production is, it's not going to be worth what you're doing with your lineup to save that money for.
Of course, great information that you're always bringing right here on the Strategy Show, also over at Awesemo.com. Of course, let everyone know everything, follow you out on social media, and of course, ever they want to get in contact with you if they've got any more questions for you.
Look me up on Twitter at Race Sheets. Always hanging out there, especially on Sunday, answering people's questions. You can find me in the Awesemo NASCAR Slack, talking to people, talking about strategy. Other than that, read my articles. I post the preview. I post the SuperDraft picks. I post the FanDuel DraftKings picks. People always try to hit me up, direct message me on Twitter. Hey, what are your thoughts? Which drivers do you like for tomorrow's race? I post them. Awesemo gives them absolutely for free. If you want to know what's inside my mind, what I'm thinking, just read the articles. It's right there.
Yeah, that was a great way how I prepped for the show last night as I was reading articles. Great content over at Awesemo.com. Of course, I'll be back here in 2.5 hours for UFC Vegas Live Before Lock. Of course, after that, we've got the MLB Live Before Lock. Of course, be sure to hit that thumbs up button here on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you know every time we are live here with DFS coverage. So that's going to wrap it up for the NASCAR DFS Strategy Show for Sunday's Foxwoods Resort Casino 301.